I really liked the first Trinian's film a lot more than I expected. Actually, quite a big fan of it. I was looking forward to watching the second film, but I kind of feel like it's not quite as good as the first one. And yeah, sequels often aren't, but this one just seemed to be a little bit over the top for me. So this was released in 2009. It's actually St. Trinian's 2, The Legend of Fritton's Gold, and was directed by Barnaby Thompson and Oliver Parker. And I mean, the cast, let's just look at the cast for a second before we get in with the narrative. Cast is amazing, narrative's not for me. Rupert Everett, Colin Firth, David Tennant, Jodie Whittaker, Juno Temple, Sarah Harding's in it, Celia Imrie, Gemma Arterton is in it, Catherine Parkinson, who I love quite a lot. The cast is just insane. And that's something that definitely kept me going at times when I thought the narrative wasn't really doing much for me. And the narrative from IMDb is as follows. The girls of St. Trinian's are on the hunt for buried treasure after discovering headmistress Miss Fritton is related to a famous pirate. I mean, that doesn't appeal to me in general. And if that sounded, if you just said, girls at a boarding school go and search for buried treasure because the headmistress is related to a pirate, I wouldn't have watched it. I definitely wouldn't have approached it unless the reviews were like colossally epic, which they're not. They're not that. That's not the case here. But because I liked the first film, I thought I'd give it a chance. And there are some elements of the first film that are carried across, such as the mix in personalities. The girls are all quite interesting, very cliquey, of course. And I think they have some pretty comedic attitudes that work well for this comedy. The casting of the first film was amazing. Some differences here, of course, but it still works really well. So those aspects were good. I think there's something weird, but the lighting in St. Trinian's always impresses me. I just feel like the lighting in both of these films is spot on, and it really ignites the colours, and it's a really colourful film a lot of the time. Also the setting, of course, the school, it works. It really works. It is just the narrative, and maybe it's because I'm not exactly the biggest fan of films where people are hunting for buried treasure. Like, it just doesn't appeal to me. So maybe for me, that's why it didn't work very well. But I think if they'd chosen a different direction, a different type of narrative, maybe I'd have taken to it more. Definitely didn't take to it that well, though. 5.4 out of 10 on IMDb is the current average rating, which is not awful for a sequel, but maybe slightly more than I would actually give it, to my own surprise. So, would I recommend it? Yes, if you've seen the first St. Trinian's and liked it. But if you watched the first St. Trinian's and didn't really by the first I mean the one that came a few years before this, not the original. If you like the first St. Trinian's, then great. If you didn't, I don't think you'll enjoy this because it's definitely not as good. But if you've seen it, let me know what you think of it. Personally, I don't regret watching it. Glad I can say I've seen it. Can't imagine I'll watch it again.